physiology of pregnancy, and particularly parturition and lactation. Rest of the topics we have discussed in previous sessions, and by concluding parturition and lactation topic, we will be completing the physiology of pregnancy. As you know, parturition is the birth of the baby passing through the uterine cavity from the cervical canal to the outside. That includes a series of steps, one after the other, for the expulsion of baby outside. Starting from cervical dilatation and effacement. And then the second stage of labor, in which the baby is delivered outside. Followed by the third stage, which is the delivery of the placenta. So as you all know, that childbirth is a positive feedback phenomena, and this is what is shown in this image as well. Baby's head stretches the cervix on the first hand. Cervical stretch excites fundic contraction, as you can see over here. Fundic contractions push the baby downward, which stretches the cervix even more, and the cycle repeats over and over again until the baby is sent out. So parturition, that means the birth of a baby, is a positive feedback phenomena to increase the excitability of uterine musculature. And in addition to the mechanical stretch of the cervix, there are other factors which are going to enhance the mechanical contraction of the uterine musculature, particularly these hormonal factors, including the increased ratio of estrogen as compared to progesterone, release of oxytocin, and effect of fetal hormones on the uterus. We will discuss these one by one. As you know that progesterone decreases the excitability of uterine musculature and estrogen increases. So by the end of the gestation, close to the parturition, estrogen ratio to progesterone is going to increase. Now, how does estrogen increases this uterine excitability? That is by two ways. By increasing the number of gap junctions between the adjacent uterine muscle cells. Also, it increases the oxytocin receptors on the uterine myometrium. From 7th month of gestation onwards, estrogen secretion is going to increase, and progesterone secretion may stay not constant or even decrease. Oxytocin is specifically required for the uterine contractions near terms. Its synthesis increases by the end of gestation, and also its receptors on the uterus increase owing to the increased amount of oxygen. This oxytocin increase leads to uterine contractions directly as well as indirectly by the release of prostaglandins. As soon as the uterine contraction starts in response to oxytocin plus in response to estrogen, the baby's head is pushed downwards, which dilates the cervix. The stimuli from the cervix and vagina not only go back to increase the uterine contraction, but also increase the secretion of oxytocin. Thus also a positive feedback phenomena to further increase the uterine contractions. Oxytocin is increasing uterine contraction two ways, by directly increasing the muscular contraction plus the release of prostaglandins from the residua of the uterine wall. So, do you think the delivery of a baby is possible without oxytocin? That's interesting. Although oxytocin has a primary role to play in uterine musculature contraction, but experimentally it has been proved that even without giving oxytocin, the birth may be possible sometimes. Effect of fetal hormones on the uterus is the third hormonal factor that is required for the uterine muscular contraction, including the role of fetal pituitary gland in providing larger quantities of oxytocin. Role of fetal adrenal gland in release of cortisol. We will see in a while what is the role of this cortisol for parturition, and release of prostaglandins from the fetal membranes at the time of labor. So all these three in combination are going to enhance the parturition. Now, what initiates parturition? Here is where the role of cortisol comes. Let's have a look. So, close to the parturition, the release of placental corticotrophin releasing hormone as well as fetal hypothalamic corticotrophin releasing hormone is increased. This corticotrophin releasing hormone will lead to increased production of adenocorticotrophic hormone from the pituitary gland of the fetus. This adenocorticotrophic releasing hormone will lead to the increased production of cortisol and dihydroepiandrosterone from the fetal adrenal glands. This cortisol is not only going to mature the respiratory system of the fetus by maturing the lungs and enhancing the production of surfactant, but also this is going to decide the timing of parturition, as it is involved in giving an initiating signal for the parturition, as directly by the cortisol as well as indirectly by the mature respiratory membrane and release of the prostaglandins. Also, this dihydroepiandrosterone is converted by placenta into estrogen, which is going to stimulate myometrial contraction. It is going to increase the oxytocin receptors, and oxytocin is going to lead to the production of further prostaglandin. So, in combination, by just increased production of corticotrophin releasing hormone, we've ultimately had a large amount of cortisol, production of prostaglandins from fetal respiratory systems. We had a high amount of estrogen, high amount of oxytocin receptors, and high level of production of prostaglandins, which all will come together to initiate the parturition. And now comes the question, who started this placental corticotrophin releasing hormone production? This is what we call the placental clock. It knows by itself that with time it has to increase its quantity of corticotrophin releasing hormone production. And this is the root cause of the fetoplacental unit. In reference to this, how dihydroepiandrosterone is converted to estrogen by the placenta, as we discussed in the previous session, the fetoplacental unit. Also, there is role of inflammation, stretching of the uterine muscle by the growing fetus, and the pulmonary surfactant protein in the amniotic fluid, and the inflammatory response because of it leads to activation of nuclear factor K beta in the uterus, and this activation of nuclear factor leads to production of pro-inflammatory cytokines, interleukin-8 and prostaglandins, which is again helping in the initiation of the parturition. The other factors which enhance or initiate the onset of parturition little early can be bacterial infection, an allergic infection, or multiple fetal pregnancies, thus enhancing the stretch of the uterine muscles. Pregnancy duration and delivery timing are largely determined by the placental rate of corticotrophin releasing hormone production. Once initiated, this is going to complete in 3 stages: cervical dilatation, in which the cervix dilate to accommodate the diameter of baby's head up to 10 centimeter, and this may last from several hours to 24 hours in first pregnancy. Delivery of the baby may take 30 to 90 minutes when the cervical dilatation is complete, and it will involve the contraction of the uterine musculature as well as the abdominal musculature in synchrony. And lastly, the delivery of placenta may take for 15 to 30 minutes. Once the placenta is separated, the bleeding is stopped. We can do the external intervention by giving the medicine, but it can also stop by itself in normal cases, and that is again because of the contraction of the uterine myometrium, which will lead to the vasospasm of the vessels under the impact of oxytocin, plus the release of prostaglandins. After the birth has occurred, the uterus has to regress to its normal size, the pregestational size, and the endometrium will be restored to its non-pregnant state. Endometrial tissue not expelled with the placenta will gradually disintegrate and slough off, producing a discharge that is known as lochia. Involution occurs also because of now as the decreased amount of estrogen and progesterone. This is going to be even faster in the lactating females, as there will be still a stimulus for release of oxytocin, which will not only aid in suckling but also promote the myometrial contractions and enhance the involution. Involution takes approximately 4 weeks in nursing mothers and 6 weeks in those who do not lactate. Now moving on towards lactation, you can see here the lobular and alveolar development in the breast tissue, and this is the one magnified version showing the epithelial cells around one alveolus of the milk secreting epithelial cell. Once secreted inside this alveoli, this is taken up by the ducts and ultimately into the larger mammillary ducts. So what is the stimulus for lactation? The biggest stimulus is suckling, which mechanically stimulates the receptors in the nipple, which is then sent via the neural reflex to the hypothalamus, where the hypothalamus initiates nervous as well as hormonal pathway. The nervous pathway stimulates the posterior pituitary to release the stored oxytocin. The stored oxytocin will stimulate the contraction of the myoepithelial cells, which will eject the milk. So oxytocin has only a role to play in milk ejection, but no role to play in milk production, which is a function of prolactin. And the hypothalamus responds to this by decreasing the production of prolactin inhibiting hormone, which is dopamine in nature. When the prolactin inhibitory hormone will be decreased, the production of prolactin from anterior pituitary will be increased, and this is what will be acting at the level of alveolar epithelial cells of the breast to increase the milk secretion. So this is how suckling initiates the neural reflex to lead to the increased secretion of oxytocin as well as production of the prolactin. And this is a better zoomed image of that flowchart showing you how milk ejection and secretion occurs. So lactation involves many hormones. First, those involved in development of the breast, estrogen that led to the fatty accumulation as well as ductal development, progesterone that developed lobular alveolar system. Also, there was the role of human placental lactogens to some extent, that is also known as human chorionic somatomamotrophin. Production of milk is a function of prolactin, which is being secreted by mother's anterior pituitary gland, and its level starts rising after the 5th week of pregnancy until the birth of baby. Its action is prohibited by estrogen and progesterone during the pregnancy. After the birth, when estrogen and progesterone level have been decreased, prolactin can perform its function. Human chorionic somatomamotrophin or human placental lactogen also plays a role in breast development and milk production. Colostrum is the fluid secreted during the last few days of pregnancy, before birth, and first few days after parturition. This is having a different composition as compared to the breast milk that is having a much higher quantity of protein and lactose, but almost no fat. And this is also having a large quantity of immunoglobulins. So it is very important for the newborn nutrition wise as well as immunity wise. Ejection process in the milk secretion that requires oxytocin, which causes the contraction of myoepithelial cells. As we have seen, the alveolar cells have the secretory epithelial cell, whereas the ducts have myoepithelial cells, and oxytocin acts at the level of the myoepithelial cells of the ducts for let down of the milk. Fondling of the baby by mother, in addition to suckling, may also lead to the secretion of this oxytocin and the milk let down. Hearing the baby cry and other psychogenic factors may also influence the oxytocin secretion. Generalized sympathetic nervous discharge and psychogenic factors will rather decrease. Hearing the baby cry and fondling will enhance the oxytocin production, thus the milk let down. Prolactin starts functioning after birth when the estrogen and progesterone level has decreased. There is going to be intermittent reflexive release of prolactin along with other hormones from the pituitary, including growth hormone, cortisol, parathyroid hormone, and insulin, which will be providing nutrients in the blood, milk. For example, the carbohydrates, lipids, glucose, and proteins required for the nutrition of the newborn. If no lactation occurs for 1 week, the stimulus for the secretion of prolactin will start decreasing. And if not continued lactation for a long time, the stimulus will vanish. Prolactin is antagonized in the pregnant female by estrogen and progesterone, non-pregnant female by the prolactin inhibitory hormone. This opposition in pregnant female is at receptor level, whereas by the prolactin inhibitory hormone is at the release level, at the level of the pituitary gland. Role of hypothalamus is by the release of dopamine, and we also call it prolactin inhibitory hormone. And when this is decreased, only then the prolactin synthesis is increased. Lactational amenorrhea is a very important clinical correlation which says because of the lactation, the female monthly reproductive cycle is delayed and menstruation does not occur. And what is the reason behind that? Nervous signals and increased prolactin. How do they act? This prolactin antagonize the secretion of estrogen and progesterone, not only at the level of ovaries, but also it decreases the production of LH, FSH, and GnRH at the level of hypothalamus and pituitary. So, by this prolactin, this negative feedback leads to decreased estrogen and progesterone, thus delaying the female reproductive monthly cycle. This is comparing the composition of the human milk with the cow's milk. As you can appreciate, there is more fatty content in the cow's milk, but greater lactose content and in the human milk. Also, the cow's milk is having a larger quantity of casein, lactalbumin, and protein. So they are a little bit different in quantity. Some people suggest diluting the cow's milk to normalize this ratio, but still the lactose content would be low. And of course, there is no alternative of nature. Human milk is having this balanced composition along with a lot of immunoglobulins for the providing immunity to the baby indirectly or passive. Advantages of breastfeeding for the infant include provision of antibodies, immune cells, secretory Ig antibodies, mucus which can potentially bind harmful microorganisms, provision of lactoferrin which binds to the iron, thus decreasing its availability for the microbes, by providing the bifidus factors which promotes the multiplication of non-pathogenic normal flora, including the lactobacillus in the infant's digestive tract, which is required for the normal functioning. For example, the production of different vitamins like vitamin K. There are also the advantages of breastfeeding for the mother, like it enhances the production of oxytocin, which hastens the uterine involution, decreases the likelihood of another pregnancy as well. And this is the flowchart summarizing the role of different hormones in initiating and promoting the parturition. Starting from placenta to release corticotrophin releasing hormone ACTH and the production of cortisol and dihydroepiandrosterone in the fetal adrenal cortex. These are the factors which led to initiation of the parturition by release of estrogen and surfactant and cortisol and the inflammatory factors. We have discussed these all in the previous session, this session in fact. And once the parturition has initiated by the release of estrogen and oxytocin, all that we have already discussed, this is how the uterine contraction begin. And once begin, this is a positive feedback phenomena via this neuroendocrine reflex of oxytocin and prostaglandin production. And this will go on keeping in a vicious circle. And this is responsible then for the progression of the parturition. Those responsible for the initiation were the inflammatory factors, oxytocin, increased quantity of estrogen, increased production of cortisol, while that responsible for progression is this uterine neuroendocrine reflex. So that's all about the parturition and lactation. Thank you very much for listening.